I love it. I love it. Welcome, everyone. We're testing out the new equipment so you guys get firsthand. We are recording and we are streaming live today. And we're also testing out the space, right? So want to utilize it, want to test out some of the space in here as well in our new recording studio. So let's go ahead and jump right in, and we are gonna get started, my friends. I love all those special effects and everything. All right. Okay. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to another industry update today. We are going to go through a lot of information today. So you guys know I'm going to pop up the slides on the screen. We're going to go through our general market update. So we're going to be talking about LA, Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino County and some of the trends that we're seeing there. Then we're going to jump over to some of the industry and market news, right? Oh, sorry, guys. So you guys know part of what we cover on a weekly basis is going to be really looking at some of the trends that we're seeing in the market, some of the industry news, and the impact that is going to have on you and on your clients. So everything from, we've been talking a lot about Senate Bill 9 and 10. Obviously, we're going to talk about that again. We're going to talk about some of what's going on with the housing element again. And then we've got some really fun news that I want to make sure that we share this week. So with that being said, let's jump right into our material this morning. Awesome. All right. Let me get a thumbs up if you can see the weekly market and industry update slides. Thumbs up, my friends. If you're seeing something else, let me know. Okay. Looks good. Okay, perfect. So let's go. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and jump right in. And of course, if there's any questions that come up, please, my friends, make sure to submit them in the chat. I know sometimes as we go through the numbers, it's a lot of information that we're reviewing and it brings up some questions. You guys know, as we get started, I am required to give the disclaimer. We know the Telephone Consumer Protection Act is in place to make sure that when we are doing our calls, that we are not calling anyone on the DNC list, my friends. With that being said, of course, make sure that your lists are scrubbed. We're going to go through some scripts today, how we can utilize some of the data, some of the information that we're sharing. And we want to make sure that you have permission to call or permission to dial. Okay, so moving on over. So the trends for January to February have not, or December to January have not been released just yet. So we are not looking at the month in review yet. What we are going to be looking at is month to date. So we're looking at the period from January 1st through the 6th and February 1st through the 6th. With that being said, anytime we're looking at numbers like this, we always want to inspect what we're expecting, right? So what does that mean? When we're looking at this information, we have to remember that when we started in January, right, we started with the holidays. So obviously that's going to play into it. We also know that we're still experiencing seasonality. What we know to be true with seasonality is that normally we see a decline in activity, in real estate activity happening in the fourth and first quarter of the year, and an uptick that happens in the second and third quarter of the year. With that being said, that uptick kind of starts in January and goes up from there, even though January, February, March tends to be lower activity than second and third quarter. With that being said, when we look at last year, we're seeing a little bit of a change in what is normal that was due to the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, it hit and the shutdown occurred in March, which is typical time that real estate activity goes up. So what did we see? We saw real estate activity decline slightly, right, in 2020. We saw that uptick that kind of occurred, that release pent-up demand as we approached the tail end of 2020. And then going into 2021, we saw that activity continue to stay very, very, very high. And so when we look at seasonality, we compare the numbers to a year ago, obviously that comes into play because we're looking at the beginning of 2021. So January, right, in February of 2021 to January and February now of this year, 2022, as we start kind of returning to more, a little bit more normal, but not completely, because obviously there's still some inventory challenges that we're seeing that we'll talk about. But I always want to make sure that we have an understanding of what happens with seasonality as we review and look at some of these numbers. All right. So with that being said, as we jump into our LA County sales trends, I want you to pay attention to these numbers down here. A number of properties for sale compared to last month, we are experiencing an increase. The increase thus far, month to date from this same time last month, is 10.6%. Now, if we look at this right over here, right, we can see that we kind of ended that year. So we don't have the new January numbers out just yet, but it is comparing this period right over here. Now, when we look at the number of properties for sale from this same time period last year, now we see a bit more of a decline there. We're seeing a decline of 31%. This goes hand in hand to some of the trends that we're seeing as it relates to inventory across the United States right now. When we look at the number of properties sold compared to the same time period last month, we see a slight decline or a decline here of 18.4%, and then a decline from this same time period last year of 38.3%. So we are seeing the number of properties for sale and the number of properties sold. That decline is still pretty consistent that we're experiencing right now in LA County. Now, when we look at the number of new listings that are coming on the market, so this tends to be with seasonality where we start seeing that a little bit of that uptick. We can see that from this same time period last month, we've experienced a increase of 2.2%. From the same time period a year ago, a decline of 39.8%, which is pretty consistent with what we're seeing on a national basis. So you guys heard me talk about this last week. I'm going to say it again. One of the things that NAR tracked at the end of December was that the number of active listings, right? So the number of inventory, the amount of inventory that was on the market was hovering at about 1 million. For all of the United States. That's not a lot of inventory, right? That's not a lot that we're seeing. With that being said, when they really compared it to the same time period last year, so we're talking December of 2021 to December of 2020, the decline was 20%. When we talk about 2019, that decline in inventory was 60%, right? So we're seeing a little bit of that increase that's happening month over month of that 2.2%, where we are seeing that there are some active listings that are coming on the market. And yet when we look at this same time period a year ago, still down almost 40% here. We look at properties pended, right? So properties that are going into escrow, this is increased month over month by 50.6%. That's a pretty significant increase. We'll probably see this play out as we look at supply and demand and the impact that has on price as well. And we look at this same time period a year ago, that decline is 32.4%. This goes hand in hand with the number of properties for sale, the number of properties that are sold. However, when we're looking at these pended, right? Because of course, if there's not enough inventory to keep up with the number that we experienced last year, even though we're seeing a little bit of that uptick in new listings month over month, we're going to see that decline year over year in the number of properties pended based on the change or the decline in inventory that we're seeing. All right, so jumping on over to our pricing trends. This is going to be really important to take a look at. This is probably one of the most, the lower on the average sold price that we've seen year over year in quite some time, right? This number has been pretty high. So I'm talking about this number right over here. Average sold price compared to the same time period last year is 11.2%. We are seeing that this average active price, we're also experiencing, that's pretty stagnant there. A 0.1% decrease is pretty balanced, that it hasn't really changed. But this average sold price compared to what we've been looking at for the last couple months, we've seen this go as high as almost 30%. We've seen this hover in the 20s, right? Or in the high 16, 17, 18, where the national average last year was appreciation of about 14%. So seeing this kind of go, it's still up from this time period a year ago. But this is probably one of the smaller increases that we're seeing at only 11.2% from this same time period a year ago, right? So that's going to be really important for us to just kind of consider, for us to kind of look at as we're viewing some of this price. Now, when we're looking at creating urgency with the seller, these are the numbers that we're going to want to utilize, right? If we're seeing that average sold price is still higher, and yet we're seeing a little bit of that decline and a decline in the average active price, this is where, when we're talking to our sellers, it's important to have the conversation of, do they know the value of their home, right? So how do we have that conversation? It's kind of a simple script. You guys have heard me say it many, many times, right? But as we go through that, it's, hey, do you know that the average sold price in your area has gone up by 11.2% from the same time period last year? Just out of curiosity, do you know the value of your home? Would you like to? Would you be offended if I prepared a market analysis for you, right? Just out of curiosity, do you know the value of your home? And then would you be offended if, right? That's going to help us guide the question to the answer that we're looking for, which is to have the opportunity to do that comparative market analysis. This is informing, rather than trying to look for the person that we're asking the question, hey, who wants to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? I always think that question is really similar to when you walk into a store and somebody says, hey, how can I help you? And we say, I'm just looking, right? We ask the question, oh, who do you know that wants to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? It's very easy for somebody to give a predetermined response of, oh, no, we're not looking right now, or, oh, no, we don't know anybody, right? But we know same thing happens when we're in the store and all of a sudden we have things to try on. We're looking for the closest person to help us. That's the law of emotional proximity. Doesn't matter who was the initial salesperson. We're looking at whoever can open the door, right? Or when we have a question about a product, we're actually interested in that product now, or we're curious about the price on something. Now we're going and finding the person that we can ask that question to. And that's why, as we go through those scripts, we want to create and generate that curiosity so that we can create, right, that proximity to the actual desire. They may not have the desire to sell or buy right now, but most people will have a desire to know how much their home is worth, especially if they're following what's going on nationally, and they're seeing all these different articles that are going out about the record-breaking appreciation that we experienced last year. All right, looking at our months of inventory, this has gone up. So 46% increase. We went from about 1.1 months of inventory at this same time period a month ago up to 1.6 months of inventory. With that being said, this does not move us into a different market. We've talked about buyers and sellers market and a balanced market before. This has historically been looked at, right, is that a seller's market is between 1 to 5 months of inventory. A balanced market is between 5 to 7 months of inventory, and a buyer's market is 7+ months of inventory. However, being in any particular market does not necessarily mean that that particular market is going to be bad for a buyer to purchase it. And so yes, we have stayed in quote unquote a seller's market for quite some time. Now, if a buyer is looking at staying in that property, they're going to gain equity. If they're comfortable with their payment, they're gaining equity. They're making that payment no matter what on a rental. And yet they're not getting any benefit from that, right? Now, when they purchase a property, they're now growing their own equity in that property. They now own an asset that they can borrow against in case of emergency. There are tax incentives that they can speak to their accountant about, right? There's a benefit of owning property. And we know that even though markets go up and down, the stock market can drop like this and drop to zero. That does not happen in the real estate market. Real estate does not go down to zero value, right? So markets go up and down. Even if we experience some type of price correction in this market, that value is not going down to zero. They still have that asset in place, right? I always share the experience that my grandmother had buying a property in 1971 for $36,000. Did she go through market fluctuations? Yes. She went through one in the 70s, one in the 80s, one in the 90s. And then of course, the one we all know about, 2007, 2008 time period as well. 4 different market corrections. And yet I guarantee that property is worth more now than it was in 1971. That's how real estate works, up and down on an upward trajectory over time. Okay, moving on over to our days on market and our sold versus original list price. Now, obviously with sold versus original list price, we're looking at a 1 week period. This is really important that we look at this usually on a month to month, but it is going to give us a little bit of that indication. Average days on market, we've seen a slight increase, right? A slight increase here of 7.4%. And then sold versus original list price, we're at right here, compared to the same time period a month ago, we were at 99%. Right? And now we're at 101%. We've seen a lot of fluctuations recently in this sold versus original list price week over week. The reason that I bring this up is when we see fluctuation in sold versus original list, especially when we see the average active price go down, we're seeing that sold price start to decline a little bit as well. Biggest issue that this is going to be an indicator of is potential appraisal challenges. So we want to make sure that we're monitoring that as we're going through the transaction. What we know is that in the market that we've been in for about the last, going on about 2 years, right? We're about to experience the anniversary of the pandemic. We've seen a lot of people pay over asking, right? But not just pay over asking. We've also seen a lot of individuals pay over appraised value. Now, we've always said that the market, what the market price is what a buyer is willing to pay, that a seller is willing to accept, that a financial institution is willing to finance. With that being said, in the scenario that we're in right now, many times the financial institution says our limit is here, and the buyer says, well, I'm going to pay above that. I'm going to come out of pocket with the difference. We've seen that happen a lot, which also means that it's created comparables on the market that are higher than what the financial institution has said the value of that asset is, or what the asset in the area is. So we have comps that are up here, financial institutions that say, hey, the value is here. And now we have other properties that are coming on those markets that are using those comparables. And so that's where we have to be very careful as we're going into appraisals, because sometimes, especially if the appraisal is stuck on the properties, which happens when, right, we use FHA financing in a particular area, that appraiser might not look at the property and say, oh, well, there's 3 other comps here, and these are all in the 700s. And they're saying, well, the appraised value was actually in the 600s here, right? So we're going to appraise this next property lower as well. So we're seeing a lot more of that. We're seeing a little bit more discrepancy in that appraised value right now. You just want to make sure that you are preparing your client for those things, whether you are on the listing side, and you want to make sure that you are preparing them for the possibility that the appraisal comes in low and that you end up in negotiation with the client. And if you're on the buyer side, the same thing, right? And you want to prepare them for the fact that they may need to come out of pocket with some of those funds, and if they're ready for that, right? Before they're counting on, hey, the value to be there on the buyer side or on the listing side, that they're counting for that additional funds that they might not have necessarily anticipated at the beginning. So these are all going to be things we want to touch base on. All right, moving on over to Orange County. Now, Orange County, we see a big uptick in the number of properties for sale of 25.6% from this same time period last month. So this 1 week period, the 1st through the 6th. When we look at the time period that we're looking at a year ago, this number is actually down 43.2%, which is pretty consistent with some of the trends that we're seeing across the board right now. We look at number of properties sold month over month, down 33.6%. Same time period a year ago, down 45.9%. Looking at our pricing, our number of new listings. Number of new listings here at month over month. This is important. We saw a slight uptick in Los Angeles. Last month, we saw an uptick as well. We're seeing actually a little bit of a decline here of 9.1%. Considering that the first, that kind of first week of the year, when we look at January, we also experience a holiday day, so we lose that day. This is interesting to see a little bit of a decline here, as we're anticipating generally with seasonality that this number actually goes up a little bit, right? So Orange County is also one of our higher price point areas. There's less properties in Orange County than in LA County. So that does kind of play into this a little bit. And yet this is going to be an inventory number that we're going to want to watch, because this is also going to impact pricing. When we look at the same time period a year ago, we look at the number of new listings down 52.3%, and then number of properties pended month over month, big uptick of 62.1%, downtick from last year of 39.7%. Now let's look at price, right? Let's look at price. So we are again seeing a very similar trend here. Average active price down, right? Average active price month over month down 7.9%. This is a more significant drop than what we saw in LA County. Makes sense. It's a higher price point. Generally, during any sort of market change, we tend to see the bigger impact happen in the higher price point markets first, right? That's because we're looking at different loan types as we jump into that area. It's just going to be a little bit different. Now, we look at the same time period a year ago, that average active price has jumped. Average sold price is up 8.7%. So we've dropped below the 10% mark here. We've been hovering in the high, in those high kind of teens and 20s here, and we're seeing this drop as well. If I was out there talking to sellers right now, this is where I would really be talking about the urgency of if they are looking to sell and if they want to take advantage of that equity that they have in their home, I would highly encourage them to sell sooner rather than later, right? We, with this average sold price starting to experience a bit of a decline here, this is all about creating that urgency. Now, we know that real estate in California, especially, we are in a inventory shortage that drives prices no matter what. And yet this average sold price kind of seeing a little bit of a slowdown. We talked about that at the beginning of the year, right? That although we anticipated, and CAR was anticipating, that prices would still continue to go up just on the basis of supply and demand, some of the underbuilding that's occurred here in California, some of the supply chain issues that has stopped new construction, we were anticipating a slowdown, a kind of softening in the appreciation. And so we're starting to see some of that play out now, which is why this number is so important. All right, months of inventory doesn't take us into any major shift, and yet a little bit of a double compared to where we were exactly a month ago, right? 0.5 to 1.1%, not taking us into a different market per se, but of course we're seeing a little bit more, not that we're seeing more inventory on the market, but it's just we're seeing the number of, the amount of inventory is staying a little bit longer. So it's not that all of a sudden we have a huge influx of inventory. It's if we have sales slow down a little bit, then we see that inventory stay a little bit longer. Okay. Looking at our average days on market, we're actually seeing a little bit of a decline here in Orange County. Now we saw a decline in the number of listings, right? We didn't see an uptick in listings. That then is going to impact our average days on market because there's less properties sitting here. And then sold versus original list price, a decline from 99% to 97%. So again, even though the average active price also went down, we're seeing that number decline as well, sold versus original list. If I'm representing a client in Orange County, this is going to be important for me to look at. I want to make sure that I'm talking to my sellers about these numbers so that they can anticipate that properties in the area are no longer selling here at 101, 102% of list price, that we're actually seeing a little bit of the decline. So this is important if we want to price competitively. We want to look when we are pricing a property, we want to make sure that we're looking at the comparables, not just what's sold recently, but what the property is competing against, what else is on the market, and how many days are those properties sitting. And then so that we can kind of, make sure that we're prepared on pricing correctly and anticipating some of the appraisal challenges that might occur in this particular area. All right, looking at Riverside County, a number of properties for sale, slight uptick month over month of 1.1%, decline from the same time period a year ago of 0.6%. Not the biggest decline that we're seeing, like we are in some of the other counties. We are moving into a lower price point county that has an impact as well. We've seen a lot of people that have relocated out to the further counties to take advantage of those lower price points, to take advantage of getting more bang for their buck in those areas as well. Number of properties sold down from last month, 18.7%, down from a year ago, 38.6%. Looking at listings coming on the market, we're actually seeing a small decline here as well. Number of new listings from this same time period a month ago, down 2.6%. From a year ago, down 30.6%. Number of properties pending, we're actually seeing a little bit of an uptick here, up 37.9%. That's almost a 40% uptick, but down a little bit under 15% from this same time period a year ago. Looking at our average price, I want you to take a look here. Average active price is actually seeing a slight uptick here, 2.3% from this same time period a month ago. Now, this average sold price that we've been talking about, we're in a lower price point county here. And so that price is staying pretty stable at the higher amounts, where we saw it go under that 10% mark for Orange County, down to about pretty low for LA County. This is still at 18.5% in Riverside County. Lower price point is going to play an impact here, right? There's more demand in some of these lower price point areas that keeps pricing stable, right? That keeps pricing stable. So this average sold price still up in this area. If I'm talking to homeowners in Riverside County, do you know that the average sold price in your area is up 18.5% from the same time period a year ago? Just out of curiosity, do you know the value of your home? Would you like to, right? We want to make sure we're utilizing that. Okay, looking at our months of inventory, slight uptick, not as significant as what we saw in Orange County, uptick of 34.1% here. Looking at average days on market in this particular area, we are seeing a little bit of a decline of 3.7%. Not a major change here, but still when we see this kind of trending down, same thing with the sold versus original list price, we see that number is higher, right? At 101% from 100%. We saw that decline in Orange County, higher price point, a little bit of a higher, inventory. And we see that not be the same in our lower price point area of Riverside County. All right, last but not least, looking at our San Bernardino trends. So this is our lowest price point county. We look at the number of properties for sale. This number has actually gone up from this same time period a month ago, up 6.3%, up 28% from this same time period a year ago. So we're actually seeing an uptick here in the number of properties for sale, but the number of properties sold, we're seeing a downtick. From this same time period a month ago, 37%, from this time a year ago, down 35.4%. We look at the number of new listings, pretty stagnant. 0.6 is not a huge uptick. So this is pretty stagnant here at 0.6%. Number of properties pending up 18.5%. When you look at this same time period a year ago, this is staying pretty consistent with the trend that we are still seeing, that the number of new listings that are coming on the market across all 4 counties, that we've experienced a dip from this same time period a year ago. In this case of 34.4%, number of properties pending down 22.9%. We look at our pricing trends. We're seeing that average active price, we're seeing an increase. So lower price point, seeing an increase of 2.1%. Average sold price from last month up 0.9%. We look at this average sold price from this same time period a year ago, up 14%. Talking to homeowners in this area, just out of curiosity, do you know the value of your home? Would you like to? Right. We know as well, national average home appreciation last year was 14%. So obviously it fluctuates when we look at micro markets in this particular case being the counties that we're looking at, but even by neighborhood, you're going to see some shifts. So if there is a particular neighborhood that you market to, this is good information to look at. You can look at some of the Altos research that's available through your Michael Lewis Marketing Suite account. There's going to be a lot of neighborhood market data that you can get through there as well. Okay, looking at our months of inventory, again, an uptick, right? An uptick. This is an uptick of 81.8%. Doesn't move us into a different market type, but we are seeing that uptick here as well. And then average days on market, slight uptick, 1 day, not a big change. But look at this, sold versus original list price from 101% to 96%. If I am, again, looking at appraisals in this particular area, this is a number that is an indicator to me there may be some challenges that come in, especially if the offer price is significantly over asking here. That's a 5% jump. That is pretty significant here. All right. Now, we got a lot of other information to cover, so we're going to move really quickly through this. Do the database 2. If you are doing the database 2 with us, we are on week 5 of the year. Do the database 2 is a technique for database management that ensures that you do not experience call bias. What is call bias? We look at, hey, what calls do I need to make today? And it is very easy for us to get into our follow-up and our lead generation and start calling through our database or our sphere of influence and start at the beginning and kind of lose track throughout. Or it's very easy to say, well, let me call these 5 or 6 people that have maybe expressed that they might be interested in moving forward or transacting business. And we forget everybody else that has the ability to give us referrals. There's one thing that we know to be true in real estate. It's that whatever your goal is directly related to the number of people that when they think of real estate, they think of you first. You're easy to reach. They find you the most credible person and you're trustworthy. And doing the database 2 allows us to cultivate and build those relationships in a systematic way so that we don't forget about people. So week 5, C and K, this is going to be for anybody with last names that start with C or K. All right, let's talk about some of the things that are going on. Now, we have been talking about active number of forbearances. I'm not going to read through the slides. I'm going to go through the highlights of the slides for you. You guys know these get posted up for you every single week so that you can go in and look through them if you need. What I want to talk about here is what we know to be true. A lot of people are still speculating. I heard it this weekend, right? Speculating that there's going to be a ton of inventory coming on the market. I still hear people talking about short sales. Might there be some short sales? Sure. But there is way too much equity that exists in the market right now for us to see a major influx of short sale transactions. Appreciation last year was 14%. It was a record-breaking all-time high last year. That means there's a lot of equity in the market right now. We also know that the number of forbearances is down below 1 million, right? There's only less than 1.5% of homeowners that have an active mortgage or in a forbearance currently, compared to 10 million homeowners that went into foreclosure following the crash of following the housing crash in 2007. So there's not going to be a lot of this that comes on the market. We also know that in California, we have California mortgage relief that plays into this, right? Your clients and those people that are in your network that are struggling with their mortgage can get a grant of up to $80,000 to help them get caught up on their mortgage. There's also a lot of modifications that are occurring. There's a lot of refinances that are occurring. Now, this is still a conversation piece for your clients. If you have people in your world that are homeowners, right? Like I said, the number one secret is that when they think of real estate, they think of you first. They find you the most credible. You're easy to reach and they find you trustworthy. How do we create that? We give them the information that they need in a timely manner when they need it. We are consistent. We're systematic about giving them information. I would be calling everybody in my world that is a homeowner and talking to them about California mortgage relief. Because here's the thing. If they need it, they will be forever grateful for you. And that's where you create a relationship that generates referrals. If they don't need it, they'll have gratitude that you call. If they're interested in and have any sort of real estate questions, those come up in those type of conversations, right? It gives them an open door to ask a real estate related question, right? And it creates that goodwill. That's why these conversations are so important. Now, I talked a little bit about what's happening with appreciation. We also know that California has been putting legislation in place to create more housing, right? To create more housing. We've seen this through the accessory dwelling unit legislation that's been in place. We see this through Senate Bill 9 and 10, which is really geared towards eliminating SFR zoning and giving us more opportunity to construct housing. But this does not happen overnight, right? It's not that all of a sudden we're going to have all this new construction that hits the market this year. That's impossible. It needs time for that construction to occur. We need time for rezoning to occur in each city in relation to the new housing element requirement that they have. The other thing that we know is there's a couple other things that have come into place. Carson, Torrance, and Redondo Beach have joined a legal effort to basically render Senate Bill 9 invalid. They are saying that it is unconstitutional. So they're trying to put a halt to the development that is occurring in those areas that the state has mandated through Senate Bill 9 and 10. Also, housing element, which gives the allocation for each city of how much new housing needs to be created in each category, affordable, median income housing over the course of the next 8 years. So there is a mandate, and we will see an increase in housing in the next 8 years, but that will not happen overnight this year. There's going to be a lot of moving parts this year because of everything that's occurring and all the new legislation, how cities are putting them into effect, how the state is going to handle some of the pushback that they're getting. We'll see a lot of that happening as well over the course of the next year. We also know that our eviction moratorium was extended. I went through this in depth last week, so I'm not going to go through all the highlights on the eviction moratorium, but this is incredibly important. I know a lot of you are talking to your clients. I was coaching one of our agents this past week who has a client that needs to list, thought they were going to be able to evict the tenants who are non-paying right now within, this kind of first beginning of the year. And now this eviction moratorium has kind of stopped that effort. Now, with that being said, there are still options for people that need to sell, tenant in place. There are also options with this new eviction moratorium with the phase 1 and phase 2 that has some kind of built-in pieces around those that would like to take over a property that they want to have owner occupied. So there are still some ways to remove a tenant if the person that is, the person that owns it or takes over ownership of it intends to occupy the property. And so that is all kind of built out within those the COVID rental protection, the tenant protection kind of breakdown for phase 1 and phase 2. There's also some changes where it's, there's residential tenants and then we have commercial tenants. So again, that PDF is going to be available. It's on the tenant protection site. This is going to be huge for those of you that have clients that have tenants in place. This is also a huge thing where there's a lot of owners, especially absentee owners that are smaller portfolios. So they don't have a ton of property. Maybe they have 1 or 2 kind of one-offs that are saying, hey, you know what? I can't sustain this anymore. I need to sell my property, right? This is a great kind of lead generation place to have that conversation with those clients as well. And then we already talked a little bit about appraisals. All right, so some of the opportunities that we have. Again, these are conversations that you want to have with your clients, these markets of the moment. We talked about those that need mortgage assistance. Have those conversations and use that to open up the conversation. It's a pretty simple conversation or a pretty simple script. When we're calling somebody in our network and saying, hey, I just wanted to give you a call because obviously you're somebody that's important to me. And there is a mortgage assistance program available in California. And I wanted to see if that's something that you might need. Simple conversation, right? We're loving on our people by giving them the information that they might need. Now, there's going to be plenty of them that say, you know what, thank you so much for calling me. I don't need that right now, but I appreciate it. That is the opportunity to say, I'm so glad that you don't need it. And I just wanted to, check out of curiosity. Did you know that appreciation last year was 14%? Would you like to know the value of your home? We get a lot of people that when we have that conversation, all of a sudden they say, yes, I want to know the value of my home, right? Even if they weren't anticipating selling. I shared about an example that we had where a client was looking to refinance and then they received an unsolicited offer. They were not intending to sell their home, but they received a bona fide offer on their property and said, you know what, pause on the refinance. I'm going to sell my property. And they didn't intend to until they got that offer. That's important. That is another lead generation tactic. If you have a buyer and you cannot find a property for them, create inventory, right? Create inventory. Don't just look at what's active on the market already. Look at what's not active that might sell if they received an offer on their property, right? Okay. A couple things that I want to share. So major news. I want to read this letter that came from Gary Keller, obviously Gary Keller, the founder of our company, Carl Liebert, the CEO of KWX, and Mark King, the president of Keller Williams Realty. They said there is no greater feeling than when someone returns home. That's the case with Stacy Onan, who we are proud to welcome back to the KW family as our new head of new business operations. Early in her career, Stacy was an associate broker and master trainer for a Prescott, Arizona-based KW brokerage. Now, Stacy has decided to join our team, coming from EXP, where as president of operations, she played a key role in shaping and growing their brokerage business. There is no doubt that Stacy's heart lies with the agent experience and with KW's culture. I am excited to be back home at Keller Williams, where the culture is second to none. More so today than ever before, Keller Williams represents the real estate company of the future, Stacy shared. To advance our vision, we need out-of-the-box thinkers to execute it. With Stacy and our host of talented leaders across the KW ecosystem, we're ready for what's next. Together with Stacy, we are well positioned to continue to accelerate our robust business initiatives. We are poised to grow to help your business grow. From Gary Keller, chair of KWX board, Carl Liebert, CEO of KWX, and Mark King, president of KWRI. We are so excited to welcome Stacy back to the Keller Williams family as such a high-level CEO, and to continue the mission of bringing in more diverse leadership. So we're excited to have another woman on the leadership team as well at KWRI and KWX. Welcome, Stacy. I also wanted to share, guys, we're really excited. KW actually has two of our associates' children that are going to be competing in the 2022 Olympics. So I wanted to share that. That's Cole McDonald, who's going to be competing in freestyle, and Stefan Schumann, who is competing in the Nordic combined team. So we're really excited to welcome them, that they'll be competing for the Olympics. I just wanted to share that. That was a really cool story that got shared as part of our KW mission moment at corporate. And I wanted to share that out with you guys as well. With that, a couple things. So 28 ideas to ignite your social media spark this February. They always say best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is now. If you had not started your social media strategy for the month of February, this calendar is available for you at outfront.kw.com to share what are some of the techniques, what are the social media strategies that you can be using on your social media channel. And our studio is officially open. We're going to be doing a lot of training on it. Obviously, you guys see I'm recording in studio today. This is open. We have 4 mics, dynamic mics, headphone sets. So if you want to do any type of recording, you can record up to 4 individuals at a time. We also have so you can't see it here in the background, but over on the far wall, we have 3 different backdrops. So there's another section that you can record in. We have a green screen, a black screen, and a white screen for all of your recording needs in the studio as well. So really, if you're interested in recording in the space, come and see us so that we can teach you how to use the equipment. We're going to have some training on the calendar for that as well. And we are currently having our listing competition. So let me go off the slides for a second so that I can go over a little bit more on the listing competition. We're going to be announcing the leaderboard thus far for the listing competition. With that being said, we want to reward both activities and results. So this is based on attending some of the phenomenal training that is listing focused. So you'll see there's going to be some CMA classes that are on the calendar. We are launching our 100K plus program, which is going to be an evening class available for everyone. It's going to go from 6 to 8 p.m. on Wednesdays with Brandy Jones. And we're going to have a lot of our top producers that are coming in and sharing some of their strategies around how they price, right? On how they go take listings, on how they present to buyers as well. So there's going to be a lot of really cool content that is coming up every Wednesday night. This Friday, I'm going to be teaching class specifically on the strategies to take listings. So it's going to be all lead generation based. Some of you attended my class on expireds, right? How to take expired listings. We're going to go in depth into taking listings and some of the strategies that exist right now for you as well. And then we're going to have You also get points if you go to scripts and role play, because we want you to be able to master your scripts, right? So all of those classes are going to be really important. And contract, that's important as well. So keep an eye on the broker hour that is listing focused. There are 2 on the calendar to go over the full listing agreement as well. So keep an eye on that. There's a lot of stuff on the calendar for you guys. But trust me when I say you want to make sure that you are plugging in. And when we go into classes on recording, whether you want to start your own podcast or video cast, whether you just want a great place to record really professional videos and content for your clients, whether you want to utilize some of the backdrops, whether you need a green screen, it's all available in our KW Stellar Production Studio. So come and see us. I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your week, my friends, and I will see you soon. Tuning out. Oh, I see. Okay, beautiful. I see. Where can we get the copy of the calendar? I am going to give you the link, my friend, right here in the chat for all of you. All right. So you could see the link right here. This is our internal website that is available for you. On our internal website, you are going to see the first tab, and I highly recommend that you bookmark this page. On the first tab, you're going to see our weekly calendar. It'll share every class that we have on the calendar for the month. We've already started next month's calendar as well, but it'll show you every calendar that's on, every class that's on the calendar for the month. There's pretty much something every day. I'm not going to say you need to go to everything. Go to the ones that work best for you. And then also notice that there are a couple options that are in the evening for you as well, right? With that being said, it'll also share if that class is going to be live in person and streamed, or if it'll only stream. So obviously you guys know Market Update, we stream it for you because we're looking at the slides, right? It's a very slide oriented. I want you guys to be able to have the recordings. The second tab on that is the recordings of the weekly Market Update. So if you cannot attend live, that is available there as well. Plus there's a lot of other resources that are available on that site, everything from our entire leadership team and contact information, our vendor team, contact information, being able to order marketing, links to KW Command, to all of the different resources, ton of other training. And you guys know I have an open door policy. If my door is open, I am available for you. But if you need my digital door, if you scroll all the way down, my calendar to schedule either an in-person or a Zoom appointment is available as well. So we're here to support you. And with that, I think that was all the questions. I see all the thank yous and have a great day. You guys have an absolutely phenomenal Monday, and I will see you soon. Bye, everyone.